Gladiatorial games are one of the most vibrant and symbolic cultural phenomena of ancient Rome. These were spectacular competitions in which fighters demonstrated strength, agility, and martial art. Gladiators occupied a near central place in the empire's social life and embodied the spirit of the Roman people, their passion for conquest and spectacle. But who were these fighters, whose destinies and skills became the subject of admiration and debate among thousands of spectators? What types of gladiators existed, and how did they differ from one another? During the Principate, 27 BC to 284 AD, gladiatorial games reached their peak and became one of the most important spectator events in ancient Rome. They served not only as entertainment, but also as a means of strengthening the emperor's power, symbolizing the greatness of the Roman Empire. By the beginning of the Common Era, most of the specific types of gladiators that reflected the characteristics of peoples defeated or hostile to Rome began to gradually disappear. Standardized categories of fighters, distinguished by their weaponry and their role in the arena, came to the fore. Retiarius. Among the pictorial sources from the Principate era, the image of the so-called Retiarius is most thoroughly captured. This gladiator was armed with a net approximately 3 meters in diameter, attached to his wrist with rope, a massive trident with a wooden handle, fuscina, and a dagger. His light equipment included a multi-layered quilted bracer, manica, made of fabric or leather, which was attached to his left arm, and a metal pauldron, galer, which partially protected his neck. The Retiarius's lower body was protected only by a fabric loincloth, subligacula. This was a brightly colored triangular piece of fabric with sides approximately 1.2 to 1.5 meters long. 2 ends of this bandage were tied at the waist, and the third was passed between the legs, secured in a knot, and hung loosely in front. Over the bandage was a belt, the balteus, 8 to 12 centimeters wide, fastened at the back with 2 metal hooks that entered holes on the opposite side. The belt had a leather backing, often with bronze plates attached. Sometimes the Retiarius's legs below the knees were wrapped in thick, quilted strips of fabric, fasces, made from several layers of wool or linen and secured with leather straps. Like most gladiators, the Retiarius competed barefoot, which likely provided him with better stability on the sand of the arena during combat. He held his net in his securely protected left hand to minimize the risk of injury from an opponent's blow while throwing it. Secutor. A Retiarius often clashed in the arena with a secutor, a heavily armored gladiator who was a contrast to him in style and equipment. If the Retiarius successfully threw a net, he would attempt to quickly entangle his opponent, bring him to the ground, and deliver the finishing blow. However, if the secutor succeeded in seizing the net, the Retiarius would cut the rope around his wrist with his dagger to free himself and continue the fight. The spectacle of a confrontation between a Retiarius and a secutor was associated by the public with a fight between a fisherman and a fish. This image was further enhanced when the Retiarius was placed on a high platform, accessed by 2 narrow ladders. From above, he fought off 2 secutores simultaneously, using piles of rocks he had collected as improvised weapons. A secutore's equipment included a massive helmet, a rectangular shield, scutum, a greave on his left leg, a manica on his right hand, and a short sword. This equipment made him a powerful and terrifying opponent, requiring speed, agility, and precise judgment from the Retiarius. Mirmillo. The secutores inherited their place in the arena from the mirmillos, gladiators who, according to the lexicographer of the late empire, Festus, were previously called Gauls. The origins of the Gauls in the arena are controversial. Some scholars link their appearance to the conquests of Julius Caesar, while others claim they existed much earlier. Either way, by the 1st century CE, the two terms had become synonymous. The name murmillo is presumably related either to the mormillos, a sea fish whose image adorned their helmets, or to the Latin word murex, meaning sea snail or cliff, emphasizing the maritime theme. Murmillos marched bare-chested. Their protective gear included a visored helmet with a wide brim and a lush plume of feathers or horsehair, often shaped like a fish fin. One such helmet, housed in the Berlin Museum, was silvered and resembled fish scales glittering in the sun, creating an impressive sight. On his right arm, the murmillo wore a manica, and his left leg below the knee was protected by a short greave and quilted puttees. The main protection for the upper body was a massive shield, the scutum, which covered the fighter almost to the chin. The murmillo's arsenal included a gladius, a short sword, sometimes secured with a strap to the wrist to prevent its loss in the heat of battle. The total weight of the armor reached 16 to 18 kilograms, of which the shield accounted for up to 7.5 kilograms. Many historians believe that, due to the similarity of their uniforms to those of the Roman legionary, murmillos could have been used for staged battles that recreated scenes of battles between Roman troops and their enemies. Arbellus. In the arena, a retiarius might also encounter an arbellus, a gladiator whose equipment was distinguished by its massiveness and unusual elements. His attire included a helmet with a longitudinal crest, a scale cuirass or chainmail reaching to the knees, and a quilted or metal plate manica on his right arm. Short greaves protected his legs. The arbellus's distinctive feature lay in his unusual weapon. Instead of a traditional shield, he carried a tubular vambrace in his left hand, terminating in a semicircular blade. This weapon, judging by surviving reliefs, was intended for cutting the retiarius's net, blocking trident strikes, and, if used successfully, for inflicting deep lacerations on an opponent. In his right hand, the arbellus typically held a gladius or dagger. His armament could weigh up to 22 to 26 kilograms, making him one of the most heavily armed fighters in the arena. Dimache. Of particular interest are dimachaires, gladiators who abandoned shields in favor of dual-blade combat. They wielded short swords or curved daggers, using weapons in both hands simultaneously, turning their performances into a true show of skill and dexterity. A striking example of a dimachaire is the protagonist Maximus in Ridley Scott's film Gladiator. His fighting style, based on the simultaneous use of two swords, became one of the character's key visual features. Hoplomachus. Another type of gladiator was called the hoplomachus. The name has Greek roots and translates as warrior fighting with weapons. This fighter was equipped with a spear, complemented by a short sword or dagger, making him versatile and flexible. A hoplomachus's head was protected by a visored helmet with a wide brim and adorned with a lush plume. Two curved feathers were attached to the sides of the helmet, enhancing its striking appearance. An important part of the equipment was a small, round shield, approximately 45 centimeters in diameter, cup-shaped, made of thick bronze. This shield was heavy enough to serve not only as a means of defense, but also as a striking weapon. High greaves, reaching mid-thigh, were worn over thick quilted puttees, the upper part of which was hidden under a loincloth. This combination provided additional protection for the lower body, compensating for the relatively small size of the shield. The total weight of a hoplomachus's equipment was approximately 17 to 18 kilograms, making him quite maneuverable. In the gladiatorial arena, a hoplomachus typically competed against a murmillo, but the choice of opponent often depended on the preferences of the public in different parts of the Roman Empire. Provocateur. The provocateur was an early and extremely popular type of gladiator. This fighter fought semi-naked, wearing only a sash and a metal belt, the balteus. His equipment included a manica on his right arm and a high greave on his left leg, providing additional protection. His military-style helmet with cheek guards, as well as a large rectangular shield and straight sword, resembled the armament of a Roman legionary. However, the provocateur's most distinctive feature was the large metal chest plate, the cardiophylax, shaped like a rectangle or crescent. It was secured to the back with crisscrossing straps and served as additional protection. From the 2nd century onward, the provocateur's helmet became more closed, with a rear brim that reliably protected the neck. Cheek guards were replaced by a visor, with eye holes covered by a grille. The shield was also modernized, receiving a vertical metal rib, distinguishing it from the traditional scutum. The weapon's lighter version weighed 14 to 15 kilograms. Gladiators typically fought in pairs, although in some cases their opponents were gladiators of other types, adding variety to the spectacle. Venator. The venators, gladiators who fought exclusively with wild animals, deserve special attention. Until the mid-1st century CE, their equipment resembled the heavy gladiator gear, including loincloths, padded puttees, manicas, and shields of various shapes. Venators used swords and spears to deal with animals in duels, becoming part of grand spectacles such as the venatio, which symbolized hunting scenes. The natio often consisted of killing exotic animals brought to the arena from all corners of the empire. Over time, beginning in the second half of the 1st century, venator equipment underwent significant changes. Heavy armor was replaced by lighter attire, tunics and short fasces. Venators entered the arena armed only with hunting spears, which created a more dramatic and spectacular effect when clashing with animals. Later, in the 2nd century AD, knee-length trousers, wide belts, and decorated breastplates came into fashion and became an integral part of their image. Equites. Lightly armed gladiators known as equites also performed in the arena. They began combat armed with a spear with a leaf-shaped tip. Once the spear broke, they continued the fight using short swords. This moment was often depicted in ancient art, symbolizing the dynamic of the duel. The equites' equipment included a rounded helmet with a visor and a wide brim, sometimes decorated with feathers, as well as a round cavalry shield, the Parma equestris, approximately 60 centimeters in diameter, made of tooled leather. To protect his right arm, the equite wore a manica. At the beginning of the Common Era, according to surviving images, equites fought in scale armor, lorica squamata, and later in simple sleeveless tunics decorated with wide vertical stripes. On their legs, they often wore quilted pads, fasces. These gladiators combined martial skills and showmanship, turning their performances into a true test for both themselves and the spectators. Andabati. Among the lesser-known types of gladiators were the andabates, who fought blind. Their helmets had no eye slits, completely depriving the fighters of sight. It was believed that andabates relied on hearing, smell, and intuition to navigate the arena and strike their opponents. Andabates' equipment was typically minimalist, so as not to overburden the fighters. They wore standard loincloths, high greaves, and manicas, which protected their arms. Weapons ranged from short swords to spears. Andabates' fights captivated spectators with their unpredictability and often resulted in unexpected outcomes. Schivanes. The Schivanes, or slave gladiators, came from barbarian peoples conquered by Rome. Their performances recreated the fighting traditions characteristic of these tribes. The Schivanes wore armor and weapons unique to their culture, often differing from Roman standards. Their battles had an ethnographic component, demonstrating the diversity of the peoples under Roman rule. The Schivanes fought not only against each other, but also against gladiators of other types, emphasizing the superiority of the Roman military machine over the conquered peoples. Gladiatorial combat was more than just entertainment. It served as an important political tool. Emperors used the arenas to bolster their authority and demonstrate generosity by staging large-scale spectacles. The masses, satisfied with bread and circuses, remained loyal to the government, and the majestic games underscored the might of the Roman Empire. Gladiator participation in spectacles extended beyond individual combat. Emperors staged mass battles involving dozens of gladiators or epic reenactments of historical battles. Such spectacles played a significant role in shaping public opinion and affirming imperial ideology. Gladiatorial combat remained an important part of Roman life for centuries, until its popularity began to decline in the 4th century CE under the pressure of Christian values. The history of gladiatorial games is not only a tale of cruelty and violence, but also an insight into the culture, politics, and social life of ancient Rome. Gladiators embodied the spirit of their era, combining military skill, the art of spectacle, and the symbolism of Roman grandeur. Their images, preserved through art, literature, and archaeological finds, continue to delight and inspire, reminding us of the complex and multifaceted nature of ancient Roman civilization.